Hello, and welcome back to the Azure Database for MySQL monthly webinar. I'm Shreya Raital, and co-hosting the series with me is Avnish Rastogi.
Good morning, good
Hello,
evening,
and
good
welcome back
afternoon,
to the Azure
everyone.
Database for MySQL monthly webinar. I'm Shreya Raital, and co-hosting the series with me. Looks like there's a bit of echo. But yeah, so this is our 10th webinar in the series so far, folks. The series that we kicked off last December as a channel of open interaction with all of you for some technical deep dives, and most importantly, to bring you the latest updates and announcements along with our future roadmap. In case you missed any of our previous episodes where we covered a wide range of topics and demos, you can check out our recordings on our YouTube channel. Our handle on YouTube is at AzureDB MySQL. Today, as always, we are live on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitch, and we have a packed agenda. We've got technical deep dives on three different topics and a bunch of new feature announcements as well this month. Avnish, do you want to give us a quick overview on the topics we'll be covering today?
Yeah, no, thank you, Sharia. So, as you mentioned, we have three topics to cover today. First topic would be how to migrate large single servers to flexible server using MySQL Import CLI. That topic will be covered by Aditi Gupta. Then we will talk about how to switch over from primary region to DR region without making change in the connection string. That has come in our many discussions with the customers. So I hope this topic will help customers in future. And lastly, we will talk about how to use flexible server free. That's always interesting and compelling to the customers. And then finally, we will talk about the new features we released this quarter and upcoming features coming in the coming quarter and any Q&A.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Avnish. But before we get started, just like always, I want to lay down some ground rules. Let's keep this session as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions or feedback, or you just want to drop a hi and let us know what you want to hear from us in this session or in the upcoming sessions, please drop it in the live chat window and we'll get them addressed as we go through the session. And we also have our product expert, Sudesh Narayan Swami, on the chat window to address few of your questions. Now, let's get started with the very first section. Since Azure Database for MySQL single server will be retired in a year, that's September 2024, it's time to start moving to flexible server. And I know many of you have already begun this journey. But if you are worried about the time it will take for you to migrate your rather large workloads over, or if you're worried about the complexity of the migrations, then MySQL Import is the solution for you. We'd like to invite Aditi Gupta from the product group to introduce us to this utility along with the demo. Hi, Aditi. Welcome to the webinar. Can you briefly introduce yourself before we get started?
Yeah, thanks Shreya and Avnish for having me over. Hey everyone, my name is Aditi Gupta and I'm a product manager with the Azure Database for MySQL team. And I work on the migration toolset, making it easier for customers to migrate to MySQL on Azure.
Thank you so much, Aditi. Over to you.
All right. So I'm here today to talk about how do you migrate your large workloads from single to flexible server using MySQL import. So we launched Azure MySQL Import in public preview last month, and we are back with a few new updates here. So just covering the key features of what the Azure MySQL Import tool is all about. It supports your Azure database for MySQL single server as the data source. It provisions a target flexible server based on the smart defaults from the source single server, consequently triggering an import option. It takes the backup snapshot of your single server, creates the flexible server, as well as restores using multiple threads. It supports schema, data, and logins import. It is a fast data backup and restore to target, and it is suitable for bigger workloads. We'll shortly see what are the restore times that it takes for various workload sizes as well. And we've launched this as a CLI user experience so that it supports any point-to-point migration as well as any at-scale migrations. Next, let's take a look at what's new here. So we've launched smart defaults for 10 inputs. What it does is it takes your source server or your source single server that you are passing as a parameter to the command and copies over the corresponding tier, version, SKU, storage size, location, whether you've enabled or disabled geo redundancy, the public access configuration, tags, auto grow, backup retention days, the admin user and admin password from your source single server to the target flexible server. This means that all of these inputs can now be defaulted to the best recommendation from what your source single server is. The four previously required parameters for Azure MySQL Import, that is tier, version, storage size, and SKU, now have been marked as optional in light of the above change that we've launched. Admin login and admin password is copied over from single server instance implicitly. So any inputs that you pass from the Azure MySQL Import would be made redundant. We've also gone ahead and published some performance benchmarking results for MySQL Import, and we've seen some astonishing results. So for a 1 gigabyte of your single server storage size, we see that in a minimal 23 seconds, MySQL Import is able to complete the end-to-end um, um, restore operation. If we move on to a 100 gig storage size, we would see close to 10 to 11 minutes. Whereas for a 1 TB workload, we are seeing up to 23 minutes of a restore time. A 10 TB would resort to close to 2 hours, 5 minutes. Next, we are now also supporting customer managed key enabled single server instances to be restored using the MySQL import command. The mandatory input parameters for enabling CMK are now the key and the identity input parameters. And we've published a few code snippet examples as well as to how you could create the key vault, create a key and save its key identifier along with creating the identity and using these parameters to be passed in a single trigger MySQL import command. With all these changes, next let's take a look as to what the MySQL import CLI command has been reduced to. So now you just have 4 essential parameters that you want to pass, and the MySQL import command will take care of all the basic or all the smart defaults from your source single server to the provision target flexible server. Next, let's quickly take a look at the demo where we'll see how easy it is to use Azure MySQL import to now migrate your single server to flexible server. So this is the MySQL single server source instance. And as you can see, it's a 50 gigs workload general purpose V2 core. We'll just run the CLI command to get the server properties listed here. So for the source single server, we are with a 5.7 version general purpose Gen 5 V2 core instance and a 50 gigs terabyte. Now let's log into this source single server to see what are the databases that are listed for the source server. So as you can see, we have 6 databases here. We are creating a new database called single to flex 2. Now we are all set to trigger the MySQL import command. And as you can see, 4 simple input parameters, the data source type as MySQL single, the data source as the single server name, the resource group in which the single server exists, and the name of the flexible server. So again, we are creating a standard D2 DSV4 based on the single server SKU, and the IOPS is 450 based on the storage size of 50 gigs for your single server. The command has now been completed, and the flexible server should now be ready for us to access. Let's go to the Azure portal and check it out. So along with the single server, we now have the flexible server as well in the same resource group. In the databases section, we can now see that even the latest database that we had just created before the import is visible. In the compute plus storage blade, we see the right SKU, the right storage size, etc. have been mapped over from single server. Next, let's talk about an import statement where we would be changing public access, we would be enabling high availability, and where we would be even updating the storage size. So you do have the opportunity to override these smart defaults where you can provide in the SKU name, storage size, as well as any other server create parameters for the flexible server. So now the command is creating the MySQL server myflexserver2 in the same resource group. The import has now completed. We'll go over to the Azure portal now to check on the new flexible server that we've migrated to. MySQL Flexible Server 2 is now visible in the networking. We can see the public access rule has been added. We'll go and check in compute plus storage, the right compute size, the input storage size has been provisioned, and finally, high availability zone redundancy has been enabled as well. So these were two easy ways as to which you could use MySQL import. And it's never been an easier time to sort of go ahead and migrate your single server to flexible server with MySQL Import CLI. Thank you. Back to you, Shreya and Avnish.
Thanks so much, Aditi, for the introduction and the demo. Love how simplified the experience is. Love the smart defaults, and especially love how quickly the migration takes place. I think it was a 50 GB instant that you showed in the demo, and it was literally within seconds. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Moving on to the second topic of the day, folks. Like Avnish said, one common pattern we've seen with several customers is the need for both in region availability, that is, within a region across zones, along with a cross region disaster recovery capability, right? So, the in region availability, Azure Database for MySQL handles with zone redundant HA. But in addition to that, having a replica in another region that provides a cross region DR possibility. But how can we fail over to this replica, which is across regions, without having to make any connection string changes? That's where we'd like to invite Rahul Saha from the product group to answer this very question with a demo. Welcome, Rahul. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Shreya. Yeah, so I'm Rahul Saha, one of the product manager for Azure Database for MySQL. So I'm part of the Growth PM team and I closely work with different customers. Okay.
Thank you, Rahul. Over to you.
Yeah. As Shreya said, I mean, like this is a very common scenario where many of our customers, I mean, who would like to do a DR drill, I mean, not alone into same region, but they would also like to do a DR drill into a different region. But again, I mean, that is a blocker. I mean, again, they need to keep on changing the connection string from in the application because the read replica, I mean, after a failover, I mean, the connection string would be different, the endpoint would be different, and they need to go back to their application and they need to change all those connection string. So today, I would like to spend some time here, and also I'd like to show you a demo, like how do you achieve this? I mean, doing a failover, and you don't need to change the connection string in the application. So here in the demo, there are a few different parts. I mean, where first part I mean, there is two different region here, and in the two different region, the pairing is required because there's also involvement of private DNS zone, which creates like different, which creates a link to different VNet, which is present in the source and the replica. And after that, we set up the primary in the demo, and we set up the HA. Then we create the replica, do a failover, and then we set up a CNAME, which is also called as canonical name, and check out how it works. So we'll move ahead with the demo. Yeah. So here already with to save some time, I've already set up the pairing between two VNet, which is between the US East and US West, as you can see here. And pairing is already done. And the entire activity which I'll be speaking around, that is already present in one of our blog written by Brian. So which will be shared later at the end of the demo. So here later on, I mean, you can see the first step. I mean, we'll be creating a Azure database for flexible server, which will be acting as a primary server, which would be in the US East region. And here we can select enable HA, but I'll not select here. And I will show you how you need to enable HA after you create a Azure database for flexible server. So all the inputs I have mentioned, and this is a private access network. So I've selected a private access, and here you can check I'm creating a new private DNS zone. This is one of the very important steps, and this would help us in doing a failover without needing to change the connection string. Later part of the video, you can check that. So here you can see that we are verifying everything, and we create this flexible server which is in one of the region, and after it gets created, which would take some time. I mean, in the deployment process, you can see that the private DNS zone is being created, the VNet has been created, and the database server too. So while now we go and check the primary server, which is created successfully, and here you can see that HA is not enabled because we didn't select HA. And to enable HA, it is like it's not straightforward. Before we enable the HA, we need to make sure that these two parameter, I mean enforce GTID consistency and GTID mode, is switched to on state. So once we switch this parameter to on state, then we can enable the HA. So I took this extra step uh, also to show you. I mean, let's say you already have created the instance without HA, then what exactly you need to do, and how you need to enable the HA. So these steps really helps to uh, show you how it can be done. And enabling the GTID mode is not a straight forward process. We need to go step by step. Once it's off, we need to go to off permissive, then to on permissive, and then to on. So that's the step by step we need to do and make the GTID mode on, and that's a prerequisite while you enable the HA. And this HA which you are trying to enable, that is within the region, because we'll be enabling the HA and we'll be creating a read replica and do a failover. We'll be checking that scenario here. So okay, so the on permissive is on, GTID mode is set to on here. Now we can enable the HA, and you can see here that it's same zone HA, not this zone redundant. And this is also an important step to understand that enabling the HA, we can select both the options, same zone and zone redundant. And same zone is like within the same zone you'll be having a standby server, or if it is zone redundant, the standby server would be into a different zone. But again, all these are like to do a into a different zone. So moving on, the HA is, we have created a flexible server, we have enabled the HA. Now we'll be checking the now the next step would be like would be also creating a read replica. And before that, we can just check what all resource have been created. So here you can see there is a read write primary, then a DNS private DNS zone. And in the private DNS zone, if you click, you can see that already an entry is there for the primary server, which is read write. And for a better view, you can also use this resource visualizer, which shows there is a VNet pairing between the US East and US West, and there is a private DNS zone, and there is a read-write primary server. So next step, we'd go and create the read replica. Going here, going to replication tab, come here, and while you create the replica, everything is default. I mean, how you created in the primary, but we have to make sure that we select the same private DNS zone which you have selected or created newly while you have created the primary server. So going to networking, we select the same private DNS zone which we have used during the creation of the primary server. And we create the read replica, and it will take some time, but I have shorten this video to for saving some time for us. And yeah, so so again in the deployment process, you can see that the VNet is being created, and during the, during during the creation of the read replica, we have selected a different region. So that region also have a different VNet. So, so all those things are getting created, and you can see exact same thing again. Uh, so you can see the region here, which is like West US, which is different from the source, which is like East US. You can see here the primary and the replica, which is also named as DR, have been created. And we can also see the same thing, the entry in the private DNS zone. You can see that there are two entries, which is the primary entry and the read replica entry. And this can also be looked into resource visualizer, which gives a better view how it is being deployed. So there is a okay. So here, as you can see, like how do you make sure that we don't need to do a failover? So this is one entry we need to enter in these here, which is like CNAME or the canonical name in private DNS. And we can also add the alias, which can be like either the primary or the read replica. So while you while you connect your application, we make sure that it connects to prod dot whatever, like prod dot mysql, and the endpoint, which is like prod dot mysql dot database dot azure.com. So instead of the read write, we select prod. So after a failover is done, we can again change the alias here, and we can point it towards the read replica. So we don't need to change every time in the application. So here, so this is a hack we can use, and we can make sure that we can do a failover, but still we don't need to change the application string. So here you can see again, so we have a read replica, and yeah, so so for the next step, we would be promoting these read replicas so that it becomes standalone, and we can connect directly to this read replica needing without we need to connect like without the application needing to connect to primary. I mean we don't need to change it. So that's the whole idea behind it. So we have these uh, we have promoted, and we can go back and uh, check the DR, which is our read replica, which was our read replica, which is standalone now. That it is standalone and it doesn't have any replica associated. So it is being promoted, and we can around that CNAME, which where you add a entry into the DNS zone, and that we change always. Like this entry would always change instead of changing into the application, and we can always connect using the alias, which is like prod.mysql.database.azure.com, and that can always be kept into the application string, and we can play around with the CNAME and the private DNS here, and that can serve and that can serve the purpose where we don't need to change the connection string every time. So at the last step, again, I'm doing again after the failover. I'm again like sometimes the customer what they do a DR drill from the region A. They do a failover to region B. Again, they need to come to region A. So again, after this is being performed, we can again create a read replica of that standalone instance, and it can be done. It can be again what the application can be again redirected without this application strings to be changed. So that was quite and where you change the application string. So that's all about So here you can check the last step where I'll be creating the read replica. Again, select a different name, but again, the most important step that is that we need to select the private DNS zone in the networking part. So which would make sure that there is a link between all the VNets while you select this private DNS zone. So this moves on and it should be created successfully. So the more details about how it is being done, all the commands, all how to set up CNAME, everything has been blogged into our one of the uh, blogs. The links you can see here, and that's all I had for today. And I'll hand it over to Shreya for further taking this webinar.
Thank you so much, Rahul, for the demo. Love how it's so simplified, right? Just one CNAME change, and you can actually no changes required on the application despite failing over to a replica. So, thanks so much for sharing this, folks. Hope this helps strengthen your DR strategy and essentially make it easier for you and your app dev teams. Do check out this blog for more details and for step-by-step instructions as well. Thank you again, Rahul. Let's move on to the final topic for the day. And here we are going to get back to the basics for a bit. If any of your colleagues or customers, or maybe even new teammates, are looking to try MySQL Flexible Server for free, I'm going to walk you through how we can achieve that. So let's move on to the slides. Yeah. So there are essentially two ways to in which you can try MySQL Flexible Server for free. The option that you must choose completely depends on your intent and the extent to which you would like to test the service out. The first option is the lab exercise. It's a sandbox environment through one of our Microsoft Learn training modules. And this is purely for learning purposes to check out how to deploy the server, what the experience looks like on Azure, what features are available, how to navigate the portal, how to connect to the service, etc. So it just basically gives you an overall look and feel of the service. This is especially suitable if you want to just take a first hand look at the service with minimal efforts without getting a new subscription or sharing any credit card information whatsoever. But you can't really use it for development or for testing by moving data onto it. You can use it to learn, to whip up quick demos when you don't have a subscription, or even to train your new team members. So I'll be demoing this learning module in a bit, but you can take the note of the link to the module, aka.ms MySQL training module 2. There is module 1 and module 3 as well, but module 2 is the one that has this lab exercise. Now, the second option is the one I'd really recommend if you want to test the service out or even use it for development purposes. This option requires you to get an Azure free account subscription. Now, Azure free account subscription is a subscription which allows you to play with a ton of services, which are always free with any subscription. But along with those, you get another set of 55 plus services, which are free for like 12 months. And most of these are capped at monthly limits. Now, getting a subscription is really easy. I will be demoing that as well. So through this Azure free account subscription, we provide the ability to run burstable B1MS queue server for a total of 750 hours per month. Now, that can translate to either the ability to run one B1MS server continuously every month for 12 months, or you can also have multiple B1MS servers running as well and you'll get around 32 GB of storage as well. So you're essentially free to test out the service as much as you want and even run small workloads or play around with most of the features. Now let's head to the demo. First, let's take a look at the training module, which is at aka.ms MySQL training module 2. This is the learning module. You can go ahead and click on start. The first two units gives an introduction and overview of Azure Database for MySQL itself, its core capabilities and functionalities, including compute, storage, network, high availability, and the such. The third unit gives you a theoretical overview of how to deploy and connect to Azure Database for MySQL. And the fourth unit is where you have the lab exercise. So this is a sandbox purely meant for learning. Let's click on sign in to activate the sandbox. You can sign in using any of your Microsoft accounts. And it checks and asks you for a couple of permissions that you can accept. Once the permissions are all approved and verified, you will get a sandbox created which lasts for 2 hours. So you can see that you have the time written here. And the important thing about this exercise is that you will need to stick to this set of instructions to create the Azure database for MySQL on the portal, especially the subscription, the resource name, the compute, storage, and a couple of other functions needs to be followed to the dot. So make sure that when you're trying this exercise out, follow this instructions as it is. So let's go to the Azure portal, and you can search for Azure Database for MySQL flexible servers and click on create flexible server. Here, first thing, just make sure that the concierge subscription is chosen, the learn resource group which is created for you is chosen. You have the flexibility to name it the way you want and choose the resource location that is suitable for you. But what's most important is compute and storage. In the module, B1S is the one that has to be chosen. So choose that, change to pre-provisioned IOPS, click on save. Authentication username and password should also be by the books. And I think there are 2 firewall rules that they've allowed you to connect from the client as well as any other service on Azure. The rest of it is default. Just quickly review to make sure that you haven't missed any of the instructions. I'm going to skip to the very end when the deployment is complete. Let's go to the resource. And you're free to play around with it as much as you want, especially networking, databases. You can go ahead and add a database, all of which is already mentioned in that module. Now, the next unit gives you an overview of how to connect to the flexible server. You have a Cloud Shell provided within the module, so you can connect to it, create a database, create a table, insert some data, and just play around a little bit. In the next section, let's take a look at the demo for the 12-month free trial with an Azure free account. Go to aka.ms try MySQL free, which leads you to this tutorial page. You can see all the instructions for it right here. And the one prerequisite for this is to create a free account. So click on that link and click on start free in this page. Here, sign in with your personal account or any Microsoft account. And you'll have to give a couple of details here to create the free account. Just note that you will get $200 in credit to use in your first 30 days apart from all the free services. And there are no automatic charges. Once the credit is over, they will ask you, and if you want to continue with pay as you go, and only then will they charge your credit card. Once the sign up is complete, I've skipped all that to hide my credit card information. Let's go to the Azure portal. In the Azure portal, search for free services. You can also directly go and create a flexible server like we saw earlier. You have all these services which are free for 12 months and the other always free services as well, like App Service or Active Directory. For now, let's go back and create a flexible server, the 750 hours that you have free with the B1MS instance. Click on create flexible server here. Make sure that the subscription chosen is free trial. Create a new resource group. Give a server name that is unique. And choose a region that is closest to you. Now again, the important piece here is to choose the right compute and storage configuration. Click on configure server. And for free trial, it's burstable standard B1MS that must be chosen. So double check that this is chosen. You can see on the right hand side that it shows free up to 750 hours. And storage is free up to 32 GB. Right, so currently you've chosen 20. You can put it to any number up to 32 GB and choose pre-provisioned IOPS to avail the free IOPS. You can see that there's an estimated total here. Don't worry about it. It will only be charged if you go above the monthly limits, and I will also demo you how to check the monthly limits later on. Now go ahead and give an admin username and password. In the networking section, choose the way you want to connect to your server. I'm going to add a client IP address just to make sure that we have one way of connecting to the server. You can leave the rest of it more or less default and review all the details. Again, make doubly sure that you've chosen B1MS and the storage is below 32 GB along with pre-provisioned IOPS. Let's go ahead and click on create. I've skipped to the very end and the deployment is now complete. Let's go to the resource. And just like last time, you can play around with almost all the features that we have here. You can connect from your server. You can add databases through this portal. You can go to the learning center and go through the curated learning path that we have created for you and the likes. And if you want to stop the server, you're not using it much, you can stop the compute for 30 days. And you can also just go ahead and delete the server. Now, to check the usage, you can go to the subscription, free trial subscription from here, or go to the home page, click on subscriptions and click on free trial. Here, just scroll down to top free services by usage, click on view all free services, and you can see all your services listed here with their usage per limit. So I had run a server a couple of hours before we started the demo. So you can see that 5 hours has been consumed and it's unlikely to exceed. And you also have the storage being monitored. So that ends the demo of how to try MySQL Flexible Server for free.
Networking issue.
That's all for this section. On to the final section. Avnish, shall we go ahead with the feature announcements and upcoming roadmap?
Yeah, thank you again, Sharia. So in the last webinar, we talked about the public preview of the private link and universal cross-region read replica, which is basically non-paired Azure regions. So both these features are now GA. You can use these in your production environment. There are some companies where they don't want to use the features until it's GA. So these are now GA. The third feature is the error logs. So in Azure MySQL Flexible Server, today we support slow query logs. Now we have this feature error logs where you can download MySQL logs. It's in private preview. So if you are interested in using this feature, please let us know. And Shirya will cover it how you can contact us to enable any private preview features. The fourth feature, which is long-term retention of backups. There are a lot of organizations in the finance and in the healthcare where they want to retain backups up to 7 to 10 years for the compliance region. So with this feature, you can retain your backup for up to 7 to 10 years. It's in private preview. Again, if you are interested, let us know and we will enable your subscription to use this feature. The upcoming features, we have one of this reschedule maintenance window. That's part of the custom maintenance window. We are continuously adding new features to help with the maintenance for your MySQL instances. So with this reschedule maintenance window, it will give you flexibility to reschedule maintenance even after configuring initially. So the public preview is coming in September later this month. And then we will have MySQL Import single to flexible server. That's Aditi will briefly talk about the public preview and the demo as well. We plan to have this GA in Q4 2023. So sometime later next quarter. And then we are also planning to introduce MySQL Import for external migrations using Percona Extra backups. So with this feature, you can upload your Percona Extra backups on blob storage, and we will use these backups to restore on flexible server configuration, which you will provide as part of the migration initiation process. So again, this feature private preview is coming in later in Q4. And then along the same lines with the migration, to continue to improve the migration experience, we are planning to launch MySQL Discovery and Assessment in Azure Migrate. So using this feature, you can assess and identify all your MySQL instances in your on-premise environment. And based on the current configuration, we will also provide you recommendations on the SKU you will need in your target environment. So that will really help you with the planning and the cost and all those things as you migrate your MySQL instances to Azure. Lastly, we have this accelerated logs. That's part of the continuous improvement in our business critical offering. With this feature, which is public preview, we are targeting in Q4 again. We will have your binary logs or the bin logs on a fast disk to improve the write throughput. And Microsoft Defender for Cloud, that's available on single server. And we will have this feature available in private preview in next quarter 2024. So those are some of the features which we are planning to release in coming quarter. If you have any questions, let us know. And as I mentioned, any private preview feature which you want to try, please contact us and we will enable your subscription. That's all, Sharia.
Thanks so much, Avnish. Folks, one thing I did want to mention here is the when we saw Q4, it's early Q4, so don't worry about it. It's not towards the end of the year. But and the other one is the answer to the question on the chat around using Percona Extra Backup for migrations. That's where the MySQL Import for external migrations feature will help you out. Moving on to the final, yeah, that's about it, right? That's all we had for today. So as we close out, I'll leave you with three things. First, to learn more about our service, you can use these resources or feel free to reach out to us on our email ID. Second, stay tuned for updates and announcements by following us on social media and subscribing to our YouTube channel. Our handle on YouTube and Twitter is at AzureDB and finally, if you want to feature in our upcoming webinars or collaborate with us on any collateral, including videos and blogs, you can just fill out this form and let us know. And you can use the same form to leave us any feedback for the session, or if you have any requests for or suggestions for topics to be covered in the upcoming sections. Thank you all for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this episode. See you all in our next session next month on 11th of October at 7:30 a.m. Pacific time. Thank you all.
Thank you all. Bye.